Welcome back to the Expectant Podcast. This is James with Zach and Eli, and we are so excited that you've joined us for another episode. We are here on location in the sunroom.
That's right.
Of some of our friends in Republic, Missouri. A little bit different. Got out of Springfield today.
Yeah,
That's right.
We're traveling.
Right.
We're on the road now.
That's right. The Expectant Podcast coming to a theater near you. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. We are on the road. Yeah, okay. Well, we have got an exciting announcement today. An exciting announcement. If you've been following the Expectant Podcast, you will now know that we are in season 3 of the Expectant Podcast. Thank you for sticking around with us. If you're new, welcome, welcome. And one thing we did in the last season that a lot of you guys have actually kind of commented out, reached out to us and let us know that you enjoyed, and something that we really enjoyed was having some guests on the podcast that we were able to hear a little bit of their story. And so tonight we have a special guest that we are so excited to introduce to you. James, why don't you introduce our guest tonight?
Tonight we have Mary with us from Illinois.
Whoop, whoop. Come on, Mary.
And so our first traveling guest, non-local. And so that's exciting.
Yes.
And
we also just met her like 2 days ago.
We did just meet her 2 days ago. So So we may hear some things for the first time too, and we're excited about that. But the little bit of the story she has shared with us, we just were super inspired by. Yeah. And we just thought, some other people could really be blessed by this. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Awesome.
We just kind of want you to share your heart with us. So kind of just tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? How'd you grow up? Whatever you want to share.
Yeah, like James said, I am from a small town in central Illinois called El Paso. And yes, there is an El Paso, Illinois.
Come on, let's go.
And believe it or not, we got our name before El Paso, Texas.
There we
Really?
go. So you are the OGs.
We did. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
But I grew up in a preacher's home. My dad was a United Methodist preacher. There was 8 kids, and we moved around a little bit, and mostly in Illinois. And when I was 14, my dad died, and very devastating for me. I was a daddy's girl, black sheep of the family. If I wanted to get my siblings in trouble, I would go to my dad. So my mom disciplined me, and my dad disciplined everyone else. And so when he died, I felt like my world just completely collapsed.
Yeah.
And I tried committing suicide a few times. And then when I was about 18, I left and did Youth with a Mission, which is a worldwide mission organization that teaches young people to know God and to make them known is their motto.
Amen.
And so I did that for 3.5 years and realized it now, but back then, I basically was living my dad's faith. I didn't have a faith of my own, which was a little crazy being in a mission organization and not having my own faith. Mm-hmm. And so after that, I went off and did college. I went to a college down in southern Tennessee. And when I was down there, I started looking at women differently. I started feeling attraction, but I knew what my mom would say about it. And so I really hid that from my friends and family. And it wasn't until, so I was at that college for 1.5 years, and then I moved to a college in southern Illinois. And about 20 minutes from St. Louis, I found a rugby team and played rugby.
Let's go. Okay.
For a semi-pro team in St. Louis.
Wow.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it was pretty cool.
I don't think I've ever met someone that's actually played rugby. That's super
No,
cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. My body is feeling it now. But at the time, it was great. And when I was on the team, I felt like I could be myself because about half of the team were lesbians. And so, but I still had that inner turmoil of like, how am I going to come out and tell my family that I'm gay? And so the only thing that I could do, because by this point, my mom and I were super close, and I didn't want to have to tell her. And so I overdosed on pills, ended up in a psych ward, was in the psych ward for a week, and decided like that I needed to come out. And so after I got out of the hospital, I came out to my mom, and she said some very hurtful things to me. But I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And which, looking back at it now, like, and even though I wasn't a Christian, like, I knew God was with me through it all.
Yeah, come on.
I dated a girl who got me into smoking pot, drinking, and I got pulled over after only drinking like a couple wine coolers, and ended up taking the breathalyzer test, and I flew below the legal limit. So like, I did not get a DUI, which was crazy.
Yeah.
And so then I was done with that relationship, and I dated another girl for 3 years. We had a union ceremony, which this was before gay marriage was legal.
Gotcha.
And I found out like 6 months into our relationship that she only wanted to be with me because I was paying her bills and that she didn't have to work. But at the time, like, I just wanted to be loved.
Yeah.
And so, so I stuck around for another 2.5 years. And I went and saw a Christian counselor on and off for 7 years. And when I was with her, she said something that was very profound, because her and I would get into debates about like whether, like, if someone is born gay, and because that's what I thought I was. Like, I thought I was born gay. Yeah. And she said, you know, Mary, like, if you take a look at 100 people in the lifestyle and you take a look at their background, like, something has happened to them. Most of the time, like, before they can remember their first thought. And so, but she said, but for you, like, losing your dad at age 14, like, you had just moved to El Paso. And so you're trying to fit in with the crowd. And then, you know, you lose your best friend, and yeah. And so, and she said, you know, like, you didn't have brothers that were, you know, good influences on you. And so, and, you know, and like, you wanted that mother, like, you wanted your mother's approval, because at the time my mom and I didn't get along. And so I really thought about it, and I was like, yeah, like, you're right. My dad died. And so, but when I was with my last girlfriend, she had introduced me to the Mormon church.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's like a small town in Illinois where Joseph Smith, who's the founder of Mormonism, where he settled for a little bit. And
I didn't know that, actually.
Nauvoo, Illinois.
Okay. Interesting.
And there's a temple there.
Wow.
And they actually have like it's called the Flats, it's a history site. So there's different houses that are replicas of what it would have looked like back in the 1800s. So like,
okay.
Like, they had like the print shop, they had like shoemaking, gun making, in different houses of people from back then.
Okay.
Which is really cool. I love history.
Yeah.
And so we came in contact with several different missionaries, older missionaries, and they just really made me feel safe at the time. And so I told myself that if I were to leave the gay lifestyle, like the Mormon church is where I'd want to go. And so after I met with this counselor, it was like 2 weeks, and my ex-girlfriend and I had a huge fight. And, I said, like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And so I left, and within 3 months, I was a Mormon. And I jumped headfirst into Mormonism. And they actually say, like, statistics show that 85% of converts to the Mormon church are from biblical Christianity.
Really?
Wow.
And the reason why is because when Mormon missionaries go out, they knock on doors, and they can usually tell if there's like a lukewarm Christian there, and they'll they'll go after them and just say, like, you have part of the truth, but not the whole truth. And so that's basically like, for me, mine was community. And so I stepped into a calling. I was a Sunday school teacher for third graders. And so I did the Mormon church. And in January, I met a guy from the Mormon church. Ended up starting to date him in February. And then in April, we were engaged. And usually within the Mormon church, you start dating somebody, get engaged shortly after, and then you get married within. It's usually like 6 months to a year.
Wow.
And so, so Eric and I were planning on getting married 6 months later, and I still had to work on some stuff from like my ex girlfriend or wife or whatever. And so I said, Eric, can we postpone it for another 6 months? And so we ended up getting married the following year. But right after we got engaged, I basically went to Eric, and I'm a people pleaser, which I'm working on that. But like my mom was not okay with me being Mormon, and having been in Youth with a Mission, like I had all these friends that were basically telling me that it, that it was a cult, and that, just all this stuff. And so, and I was sick, like I just didn't want to hurt my mom anymore. And so I left the church at the time, and I went to Eric, and I said, I love you, but, and I'm not asking you to leave the Mormon church, because he had been there 6 years. I said, but if you stay in the Mormon church, I don't think we should get married. And he ended up staying in the Mormon church, he ended up going, leaving the church, and we started looking around at different Christian churches. Okay. And we probably went to a different church every couple months. And just because we were looking for community, and we couldn't find community. And so then a year later, Eric and I get married, and soon after we get married, started seeing changes in him. And he came to me 4.5 months later and said, the only reason I married you was because I thought you'd be a submissive wife and go back to the Mormon church after we were married. And so 2 weeks later, he was gone. And then I started trying to just figure out what church that I was supposed to go to. And mind you, like, I'm still not a believer. And so since I turned 18, so for like 20 years, I've probably have been to like 35 to 40 different churches.
And what was your experience kind of while visiting all of those churches throughout that time?
So I think I was just, because the Mormon church is so good at community,
Okay.
that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And I honestly like didn't find it in a lot of these churches. They were either too big, or there was like different cliques within the churches. Yeah. And so that was that was the main thing for me. So, so then I decided that I was going to become Catholic. And during this time, I was doing like adult catechism, which is a 9-month catechism that you go through. And then at Easter time, you get it accepted into the church.
Yeah.
And so in 2014, I had met a ministry who it was 5 ex-Mormons who had all served Mormon missions, all left the Mormon church, and all are Christians. And so they they do this ministry where they travel around sharing like their testimonies and like original songs.
Okay.
And so they had come to my mom's church in El Paso, and at that time, so like little story here, the founder of this ministry was actually on his 2-year mission and was challenged to read the New Testament like a child.
Wow.
From a Baptist preacher. And so he read the New Testament 12 times on his Mormon mission.
Wow.
And within 3 weeks of his Mormon mission ending, he got radically saved.
Come on.
And then he ended up, so then he was praying that God would give him opportunities to share. And so and so the next day, his mission president called him and said, "Hey, I'd like for you to get up and share about how your mission went, your Mormon mission." And so he's like, "All right, God, like you've given me this opportunity."
Yeah.
And so he did. He got up in front of 60 of his missionary peers and his bishop and mission president, and basically said, "I don't believe in the Mormon church anymore. I don't believe that you have to work for God's approval. Jesus is enough." And so he ended up actually he ended up getting called into his mission president's office and called the Antichrist, had the spirit of the devil in him, and ended up getting kicked off his mission. And his parents had been converts to the Mormon church, had been going for 30 years. His mom was a Brigham Young University 10-year professor. His dad was a high priest in the church, so they were pretty involved in the Mormon church. And then he had 2 brothers who both served Mormon missions, and then his sister who was a senior in high school, and I think she was getting ready to do her Mormon mission. And so when Micah got kicked off, because before he left for his Mormon mission, I mean, he would go to, like, he was the youngest, he would go to the temple every day and serve. Like, he was the youngest, like missionary that they had at this temple. And so when he came off his mission, his parents were like, "What's going on?" Like, and his dad actually got a call from the mission president saying that, "I think your son has a demon living in him. And I mean, if that was my dad, like getting that call, like, or if I was getting a call about my child, like, I think I would like have hung up on him.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he gets off his mission, and before they could excommunicate him, his parents, within 48 hours, sent him back on a flight back down to Florida. And before he got on the flight, he challenged his parents to read the New Testament. Actually, I think he challenged his whole entire family to read the New Testament like a child. And within a year and a half, all 6 of them left the Mormon church.
Wow, come on.
And including like high school sweethearts. So like the 3 boys all married their high school sweethearts. So they all left the church.
Wow.
And all of them were in ministry. This ministry recently closed, but they were in ministry for 18 years. And so then when Zondervan, which is a publishing company, got wind of like this family leaving Mormonism, and especially a Brigham Young University professor, they contacted her and said, we'd like for you to write a book about your experiences coming out of the church. And so she did. And after it was published, it was on Zondervan's top 10 bestsellers.
Wow.
And it was sold out on Amazon within 2 days.
Come on.
And so anyway, so this ministry came to my mom's church, had the books with them. And so they had given me a copy of Unveiling Grace, and I read it, and I called Lynn, and her and I talked like every week on the phone. And 4 months later passed, and she said, Mary, she said, you need to stop living a double-minded life. You either need to jump headfirst into Mormonism, headfirst into Catholicism, or headfirst into Christianity. And at the time, I wasn't willing to give Christianity a shot because I thought Christians were very judgmental. And I still had that like works-based mentality. So then January and February of 2015, I did adult catechism in the morning at the Catholic Church, and then I did the Mormon Church in the afternoon.
Wow. And
it got to the point where I was so confused because they're totally 2 different theologies.
Right.
That just the Mormon Church, like just the community, like that's what drew me back to the Mormon Church. And so I stopped doing the adult catechism, jumped headfirst back into the Mormon Church. And after Lynn had told me that, like, stop living a double-minded life, I had stopped talking to her for about 4 months. And in April of that year, I heard a voice, which is the only time I've ever heard a voice like this. And it said, like, you need to contact Lynn Wilder. And I was like, I really have nothing to say to her. Like, I don't want to talk to her. But I called her and I said, Lynn, I said, I'm not sure why I'm calling you, but like, I just heard this voice say I needed to call you. Wow. And she said, Mary, like, that was the voice from Jesus. She said, because Mike and I, which is her husband, are going to be in Indianapolis, which is about 2.5 hours from where I live. Next month, we want you to come over and see us. And so my first, like, because I tried, like, not going over to see them. And I was like, I don't have a place to stay. And she said, you can stay with my sister, which at the time, I didn't realize she was a very devout Christian.
Let's go.
Yeah. So anyway, I drove to Indianapolis and went and heard Lynn and Mike speak just about their experiences in the Mormon church and like just sharing like the differences between Mormonism and Christianity. And so, and afterwards, Lynn and Mike, Lynn in particular, Mike was with us for a couple hours, but Lynn sat down with me for 6 hours and answered all my questions.
Wow.
And she just really like took time to just like love on me and encourage me. So, so then the next day I am going to church with her sister's family.
Come on.
And the pastor spoke about grace and how we don't have to work for God's approval. And so I'm like, okay, like at this point, like God was starting to work on my heart. And so then in the afternoon, Lynn and Mike spoke again. And for the first time in 34 years, like I just felt God like that I never had felt him before. And I just like scales just completely fell from my eyes. And I gave my heart to Jesus.
Come on.
At that. Yeah, it was awesome. And so so then I'm driving home and I'm like, God, allow me to share my story with people. And I kid you not, 3 days later, Lynn calls me and says, Mike and I are going to be in Nauvoo, Illinois. We want you to pray about giving your testimony. And so when Lynn had told me, to stop living a double-minded life, and when I completely cut her out, I had gone to Nauvoo several times, I think 6 times. And so all 200 missionaries knew me, considered me their granddaughter. And so when she first told me, I was like, no, like I'm not going over to Nauvoo. But then I, prayed about it and I'm like, okay, God, like this is an opportunity for me to share like what you've done in my life. And so I called her and I said, like I'm in. And I told her, I said, I would love to get baptized. And so and she's like, we would love to be there if we can. So we contacted the guy who was in charge of having them come and speak. And he's like, yeah, well, I'll get a hold of the church and, I think that should be okay. And I said, but I want Lynn and Mike to be the one that baptizes me. And so so I spoke at 3 out of the 4 venues that they spoke at. And the first one I spoke at, there was a missionary friend who came and heard me speak.
Wow.
She was like 80 years old. She was like my grandma.
Wow.
But she came with the mission president, and which he wanted to make sure like that the Christian church wasn't going to convert her. And so she told me, she said, I don't agree with what you're doing, but I want to be there to support you.
Wow.
And so I saw her taking notes on her computer. And, after I got done speaking, she got up and left, which I'm grateful that she was able to hear like, what God has done in my life. And then the day I actually got baptized in Keokuk, Iowa, which is just across the border from Nauvoo.
Let's go.
And so we had both just got done sharing. And so Lynn and Mike ended up baptizing me. And we had gone out for dinner. So it was the second venue. So we still had one more venue at night. And so Lynn and Mike were out eating, and completely out of the blue, Mike said, Mary, like I know you lost your dad at such a young age, and you haven't had like a male role model in your life, and I would love to be your surrogate dad.
Wow.
And so it's been amazing. I mean, they live in Florida, which I've gone there a couple times, which is nice to go for vacation. And I've seen them a couple times every year. But it's just nice to know that I have like, I mean, I have God, which is awesome. But it's nice to know that like I have an earthly father.
Of course.
That I can go and, like if I'm hurting or if I just want to talk to somebody, like I have him. So I'm just really grateful that, like just what God has done in my life. And, I met a couple of my friends here in Republic. I met them actually on a mission trip in India and just in June. And
I love it. That's so awesome.
And I with an organization called Beauty for Ashes, and it's a community. Like I just felt super, I met their family this weekend, and I have just felt super loved. I felt like it was just like God's like arms, like hugging me, and like I just super safe with that family. And so I'm just grateful that God gives us earthly families and community to be a part of.
And what's so powerful about that, when I'm sitting here listening to you talk, is it says Jesus told his disciples, you may lose everything for me. You may lose your family, your friends, your community, right? But he said, if you follow me, you will gain all of that and so much more. Yeah. And so your story is a testament to the truth of that statement of Jesus. You spent all these years looking for community in one place after another place after another place, and yet you never found a place where you totally could say, I fit here, I'm satisfied here, the Lord has met me here. But when you gave your life to Jesus, now you're watching him give you back all the things that you never could find anywhere else, even when you thought you could find it. And you're finding it in the most random places, right?
For sure.
Like you found it in Republic, Missouri, out of all the places. You found it in India, out of all the places, right? Yeah. And so I think that's just so beautiful. And I just want that to be an encouragement to our listeners that like the Lord will give you so much when you just surrender to him.
Yeah, for sure.
When you stop striving for it and you just say, maybe I lose everything to follow you, but I trust that you're going to give me everything that I need. And so that's my question to you is, what was the difference, like mentally, emotionally, spiritually for you of all the other places that you went versus when you accepted Jesus and he came into your life? Was there would you be able to say that there was that defined difference that you noticed in your life?
Oh yeah. Like I mean, when I was in, the gay lifestyle, like I was looking for, really for like just only what God can only give me, like just love and acceptance and, like he's never going to leave us or forsake us. And, like, and in even in the, like when I went to the Mormon church, like all the friendships were conditional. And I didn't realize that until I left. Like, as long as I was doing what they wanted me to do, what my bishop wanted me to do, what my friends in the church wanted me to do, they were friends with me until I left. Once I left, then like they didn't want to be friends with me. And that's awesome. I mean, that's the greatest thing about Christianity is like you have these lifelong friends. Yeah. And there's no like condition. It's unconditional love because you have Jesus as the center of it all. Whereas, the Mormon church, like, I mean, you have to work for it. And even in the end, like if you were to ask a Mormon, do you think you're going to heaven? Well, I sure hope so. I sure hope I've done enough. And whereas in Christianity, like, I mean, Jesus paid for it all on the cross. And that's, what we need to just continue to remember, like, we don't have to work. We don't have to strive for God's love. He just gives it. It's unconditional.
Yeah.
Amen.
And that's powerful. I was right there with James in the same thing. As you just shared your story, I was just reminded so much the importance of community, and not just a community, but a healthy community. That's one thing I think even, Zach, James, and I, if we just recently met each other, almost a year ago which is crazy. It's already been a year.
I've known James for a while.
This group,
we're
31 years or so.
I just recently met them a couple years ago. But even with the three of us over the past few months and over the past year, we've just noticed that the community, and Zach and James, y'all can speak to a little bit to this as well. The community that's been formed that we're seeing now has been something that it's a community that's constantly drawing you closer to the Lord, which I think is a sign of a healthy community.
Exactly.
It's people that share that unconditional love. It's not works-based. It's not this. It's not that. But we've seen where when we stop striving and we just start pursuing God wholeheartedly, how He'll surround us with people that are lifting us up and bringing us closer in the most unconventional and most uncanny places, uncanny ways. So just as I hear your story and I'm thinking and just listening to that, I'm reminded of the importance of community. And for, those that are listening to it right now and they're like, man, maybe I don't have that community. And we've talked about that before on this podcast. And they're just like, man, I don't have that community. Man, I'm looking for this place, and I'm looking in all these different places. I'm looking, in this alternative lifestyle. I'm looking in drugs. I'm looking in alcohol. I'm looking in this. I'm looking in that. And to hear your testimony of finding that, not just community, but finding that place that you said only God can fill, I think was something that was so powerful, and something that I think is going to be of great benefit, and something that's really ministered to a lot of those who were listening.
Yeah, and what I love about Christianity is you meet a man and then community comes, rather than a lot of other times it's like community comes and then you belong, rather than like he's the one that actually births it to where like he's the one that actually sustains it. Even through the ups and downs and trials, and we all go through different seasons, are in different places, but like we still bear the name Jesus, and it's because of that. It's like because of Him rather than because of like our good works or how we feel or like if we're doing good things, but it's like because of Him. And that way it's like it's always going to be, regardless of like what season it is, like it's always going to be, obviously life is, wild, and we move away and different things, but like we always have like a community in heart because we have Him. So what would you say to the person that is struggling? Kind of, you said it a little bit of just like with that alternative lifestyle of like, hey, I want to go this way, I want to go this way, and it may be because of community or past hurt or whatever. I don't know where this person may be at, but like what would you speak to them right now if they were listening?
Man, that's really hard. Because when I was in that alternative lifestyle, like I didn't want to listen to anybody.
Yeah.
And I would just say, like, man, if you're struggling, like Jesus is the ultimate source. Like, I looked for so many years to find love and acceptance from what only Jesus could give me. And if you're looking for a place to start, in the Bible, the book of John is great.
Yeah, come on.
It talks about miracles and like the person of who Jesus was. And so, yeah.
And I'd say that goes for anybody, whether it's an alternative lifestyle or you're in another religion and it's just something's not right, or it could be Mormonism, it could be Hinduism, it could be Islam, it could be whatever. If you're out there and you're listening to this, so you mentioned some people in your story, and I just want to kind of shout out to them. They do have some resources if people out there are interested. You mentioned Lynn, and she has Unveiling Grace. Looking for answers, that'd be a good place to go for that. But yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing tonight. We are so happy that we met you 2 days ago, and that you graciously accepted our invitation to come onto the podcast. We're believing that the Lord is really going to use this to touch some people So thank you, everybody out there, for joining us again on the Expectant Podcast. We're so excited to have you with us and to have you with us the next time. Until then, have a good night.